We're heading back to Canon Films territory. Let's get into it. Back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well out there. And today we're going to head back to Canon Films territory. As a matter of fact, when this film was released or was being made, this was coming to the close end of Canon Films' legacy, especially in the 80s. They were in financial trouble by the time this film rolled around. And we're going to talk about it in a second. But before we get into it, like, comment, subscribe. Join me here. I really would appreciate that. Click on the little notification bell. That way every time I upload a video, you'll get notified and you can see what the hell's going on over here. Now back to Canon Films territory for Braddock, Missing in Action 3. This one's been heavily requested for a long time because last winter I did a bunch of Canon Films and I did some a couple months ago, and now we're back to do Missing in Action 3 finally. Now, I don't know what's up with the rights with this film. The first one and the second one are available on Blu-ray. This one is not available on DVD or Blu-ray. I had to buy it on Apple iTunes to get a hold of it, and I haven't seen this one in probably 20 years. Easy. 15 to 20 years I haven't seen Missing in Action 3. The first two I've seen, besides when I reviewed them last year, and I had seen them fairly recently, but this one is probably the one I definitely have not seen in the longest time, 15 to 20 years at least, since I've seen this film. Now, Missing Action 3 came out January 22nd, 1988. It's rated R. It's an hour and 43 minutes long and was released that year. It made $7.1 million. Now, compared to the first two, this one went to direct-to-video in many countries. And this was towards the end of Canon Films, like the boom of Canon Films. They were in financial trouble by the time the sequel came around. Matter of fact, Chuck Norris said he wasn't planning on making a third film. But basically, they had a story in mind. Something came up about American Asian children in Vietnam that got left behind. These people that had relationships with soldiers, that when the U.S. troops pulled out, they got left behind, and these children were left there, abandoned pretty much in Vietnam. So that was the genesis of the story of this film. Now, originally, Missing in Action 1's director, Joseph Zito, was going to come back and direct this film. He was locked in to come back, but he had creative differences with Chuck Norris that they couldn't reconcile. So Aaron Norris made this his first directing gig for a feature film. And Chuck Norris is back as Colonel James Braddock. Now, the timelines of all three films, I mean, the second one's obviously the prequel. Braddock was in a camp, and he was one of the MIAs in Vietnam, and he escaped. And that was meant to be the first film. But Canon Films decided upon release that they were going to release the second film first because they thought it was the better film, which turned out to be good because the first film became a pretty good hit. And the second one was a pretty good hit as well. Now, this one, I don't know what the budget was. I couldn't find it anywhere, but we'll get into it because this one definitely looks a little cheaper than the other two. Right in the beginning of the film, let's get in the plot here, and then we'll talk about the pros and cons of this film. We're taken to Vietnam during the pullout, the fall of Saigon, and there's mayhem in the streets, and the U.S. Embassy's trying to evacuate. We see a cameo by Keith David, although he's in a few scenes in the beginning. We don't see him again after this. And we come to learn that Braddock has a wife that works for the U.S. Embassy. And Braddock's trying to find her. He can't. He's back at the embassy trying to evacuate people. And in the melee, this guy who throws a woman to the ground trying to get on the chopper that's leaving, Braddock steps in and throws him to the ground, gets the woman on the plane, or the chopper, and the guy pulls a handgun out and shoots Braddock in the shoulder. The guy gets shot. Braddock gets dragged onto the helicopter and takes off. His wife got left behind in Vietnam, and he didn't know she was pregnant. And then we fast forward some years, and this priest approaches Braddock in a bar and tells him that his wife is very much alive. Braddock was under the impression that she was dead, and that she had a son that Braddock didn't know about. She was pregnant. He didn't know that at the time. And would he like to go back? He should go in and try to help his wife because she is on the Army's shit list, pretty much. And that is pretty much the plot of Missing Action 3. Braddock goes in to find his wife and son. We have a new scumbag general that has a hard-on for Braddock that wants to torture him to death. And this general is so over the top in this movie, he yells Braddock about 100 times. Braddock! It's funny by the end of the film. At first, it's fine, but he does it so much that by the end of the film, it's almost parody. We got Braddock's wife gets shot in the head. Him and his son get captured. There's a torture scene. It's pretty hardcore. I got to be honest. They definitely took it to the max on that one in terms of what they were willing to do to get information from Braddock or get him to do something or to torture Braddock. And then Braddock gets loose, saves his son, saves these children and the priest, gets to the border and defeats the enemy and we have a happy ending with Braddock saving these children, although his wife was shot in the head and got killed, but that is pretty much Missing in Action 3. I think Chuck Norris is pretty good here. Chuck Norris is always good. I mean, he's not the best actor, but he's stoic. He doesn't talk a whole lot, and he can kick ass. And that's why we watch a Chuck Norris film, because we know in real life he can kick ass. He's a martial art, a very accomplished martial artist. And he was he had some good films, and he had some good canon films. Some of the action's okay. Some of it's really, the gun that he takes into Vietnam is a bit much. It's so big and bulky, there's no way you would take it with you. And some of these special effects don't work. And their practical effects, they just don't work. You could tell their budget was so minuscule on this film, especially compared to the first and even the second one. And I don't think the action's as well shot. I think Aaron Norris did a better job on Delta Force 2, which was their next project together. Matter of fact, this film and Delta Force 2 were shot back to back by Cannon Films. They were so strapped for cash, they were just trying to make sequels to try to make money back that they had lost on other projects. That's why they greenlit Missing in Action 3. They wanted a Missing in Action 3 and a Delta Force 2, and that's why we got those films. Because in 1990, Cannon Films declared bankruptcy. That's when they went bankrupt. So this was right at the tail end of their reign. Although they did reconfigure and came back in the early 90s, it didn't last long. And then the guys went off and made another distribution company. But Cannon Films, pretty much after 90, was pretty much done. Positives, other than that, I mean, I think his chemistry with his wife and his son's okay. And the priest is decent. Some of the acting is good. The guy who plays him is okay, but by the end of the film, like I said, his dialogue, he yells Braddock about 100 times, and by the end, it's just laughably bad. Again, the action's just okay here. I think the action's better shot in the first film. I even like the second film better. This one's just okay. It's a middle-of-the-road, really low budget. You could tell they didn't have the money, Cannon film. And Chuck Norris said at the time he was going to sue Cannon Films. They didn't think they were putting enough money into the advertising for this film. He thought this was the best one. I don't agree with Chuck on it. I love you, Chuck. I don't agree with you. The first one was the best film. And I even think the second one was a better film than this one. This one's okay. You can sit down and watch it and have a good enough time with it. But it's not great. It's just okay. It's middle of the road, Cannon Films. I mean, Cannon Films had made some decent movies over the years, and Chuck Norris made some decent movies with them. This is not one of them. It's just okay at best. Even on the lower side of okay, you know what I mean? But I would give Missing in Action 3 a 5.5 out of 10. This is not the best of the series. I would say, if I ranked them, I would say this is number 3. They go in order. The first one's number 1, the second one's number 2, and the third one's number 3. So yes, 5.5 out of 10 for Missing Action 3, or Braddock, Missing in Action 3. What are your thoughts on this film? Leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, share this video. I would appreciate that. I'll be back with a review for Scream 4. On my way to see the new Scream next Thursday night, opening night. I'm going to have an out-of-theater reaction for that. I'm going to have a review for Blade next week as well. I'm going to do the whole Blade trilogy this month. I can't wait for that. But until then, bye.